you ever have a moment in your life where something just doesn't feel right? Like the air is heavy for no reason. The silence feels too loud, and your gut is screaming at you to leave, even if your brain can't explain why? That's what happened to my cousin Dan back in 2009. Dan's one of those people who never believed in ghosts or Bigfoot or anything like that. He's always been grounded, painfully logical, sometimes to a fault. So when he told me the story, and I saw the look in his eyes while he told it, I knew he wasn't exaggerating. This was real for him. He had just moved out to northern Idaho. A kind of starting over moment after his life went a little sideways. Nothing too dramatic, just a breakup, some bad jobs, and that mid-20s feeling of being completely lost. So when he found a small rental home at the edge of a pine forest for dirt cheap, he took it. No questions asked. It wasn't much to look at. Faded green paint, creaky porch steps, and a crooked chimney that looked like it would fall over in a stiff breeze. But it was quiet, secluded, and affordable. Too affordable in hindsight. The landlord was this older guy named Martin, gruff but polite. When Dan asked why the rent was so low, Martin just chuckled and said, "People don't tend to stay long out here. City folks get spooked by the woods." Dan thought that was kind of funny. He liked the woods. Grew up camping and hiking. The idea of peace and quiet was exactly what he wanted. The first week went fine. He got his mattress in, a few boxes, some tools, nothing fancy. He started a maintenance job at a nearby resort, so he was gone most of the day. At night, he'd sit on the porch with a beer and listen to the wind roll through the trees. But it was the second week that things started feeling wrong. It started with little noises under the house. Scratching, shuffling, then this weird dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled across dirt. It happened late at night, always when the wind died down and everything else went quiet. He figured it was raccoons or maybe a badger. The house sat above a crawl space with a trapdoor in the laundry room that led underneath. But he didn't want to go down there. Not unless he had to. He brushed it off. But then, he started waking up with his bedroom door open. He always closed it. Always. Even propped a box in front of it once, just to be sure, and still he'd wake up and it would be wide open. Then he noticed his tools disappearing. A screwdriver here, a flashlight there. He assumed he'd misplaced them. Maybe left one in the truck. But deep down, he knew he hadn't. The night everything changed. He had gotten home from work just past midnight. Exhausted. He was making a sandwich in the kitchen when he heard something breathe. Not an animal noise. Not rustling. A low, wet exhale. Like someone exhaling through their teeth right beneath the floorboards. He froze, sandwich still in his hand. Came again. Slow. Deliberate. Closer. Dan backed up and grabbed a flashlight. When he crouched near the floor, everything went silent again. Not even a creak. He didn't sleep that night. He sat in the living room with a baseball bat across his lap, flashlight in hand, jumping at every little noise. He told me he felt like prey, like whatever was down there was waiting for him to let his guard down. The next day he called Martin, told him something was under the house. Probably an animal, but it sounded big. Martin didn't sound surprised. He said he'd swing by that afternoon and take a look. Dan said when Martin got there, he looked uneasy. Not scared exactly, but like he already knew what he might find. He asked for a flashlight and opened the crawlspace door. Then he climbed down. Dan waited upstairs, listening to Martin's footsteps below. Then silence. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. Dan called down. "You okay?" There was a pause. Then Martin's voice, weirdly muffled, called back. "Yeah. Just some insulation damage. Nothing to worry about." He came up a minute later, pale and sweating. His hands were shaking slightly. Dan said, "Well, what is it?" Martin shook his head. "Might be a raccoon den. I'll send someone to patch it up next week." But he never sent anyone. And Dan didn't see Martin again after that. That night, Dan stayed up again. Flashlight, bat, nerves on edge. Around 2:30 in the morning, he heard it. Not under the house this time. In the hallway. Creaks. Soft ones. Then something that sounded like a hand brushing against the wall. He stood up, heart pounding so hard he said he could hear it in his ears. The hallway was pitch black, no windows. Then a shadow moved, low to the ground. Dan raised the bat just as something long and pale and wrong peeked around the corner. It looked like a person, but wasn't. The limbs were too thin, too long. And its face, he said it was smiling, but not in a way that meant anything good. Dan swung the bat. The thing shrieked, this awful, high-pitched choking sound, and scrambled backward. He chased it, but it moved fast. Too fast. By the time he got to the hallway, it was gone. But the crawlspace door was open. Wide open. He called the sheriff the next morning. When they investigated, they found more than just raccoon tracks. There was a narrow tunnel, hand-dug, stretching back at least 40 feet into the earth. At the end of it was a chamber, a small room someone had carved out under the house. Inside were old sleeping bags, torn food wrappers, and bones. Dozens of them. Small animal bones, mostly. But there were two that the sheriff quietly handed off to forensics. Human. The missing tools were there too. One flashlight was still flickering. The cops never found whoever had been living down there. They searched the woods for days. Nothing. Dan moved out the next day. Didn't even take everything with him. He couldn't stand to be in the house for another minute. He says to this day he doesn't feel safe in silence. He always has background noise, a fan, a TV, music. Because when things get too quiet, that's when he hears it again. That slow, steady breathing, just under the floor. This next story comes from someone I met in college. Her name was Emily. She was one of those people who never looked like she had anything bad happen to her. Always smiling, always warm. The kind of person who made you feel comfortable without even trying. So when she opened up about what happened to her and her older brother one winter, it changed how I saw her completely. She shouldn't be alive. That's not an exaggeration, even she says that. It happened when she was 14, living in Minnesota. Her family had this cabin way up north, near a lake that froze over completely in the winter. They went up there every Christmas. It was sort of a family tradition, snowball fights, sledding, hot cocoa, board games by the fireplace. But that year, her parents were going through a rough patch. Her mom decided to stay home. Her dad took her and her 17-year-old brother, Drew, to the cabin anyway, figuring it would do them all some good to get away for a while. They arrived the day before Christmas Eve. Temperatures had dropped hard, like below zero cold. The cabin was surrounded by woods on all sides, and the nearest neighbor was almost 2 miles away. But it felt peaceful, like nothing could touch them there. That peace wouldn't last. The lake near the cabin was completely frozen. Thick, glassy ice stretched for acres. Drew thought it would be fun to go ice fishing, so he brought his gear, even packed a little pop-up tent and a sled to carry it all. Emily went with him, mostly just to hang out and maybe take some pictures. They went out early in the afternoon, bundled in layers, trudging across the ice until they found a good spot near the middle of the lake. Drew set up the tent while Emily wandered off a bit, taking photos of the snow-covered pines. That's when she heard it. A crack. Not loud, not dramatic, just this soft little snapping sound under her boots, like a branch breaking under pressure. She froze, looked down. There was a hairline fracture in the ice. Just one. She backed up, slowly, carefully, and called out to Drew. He waved from the tent and said, "We're fine. Ice is thick enough here. Don't panic." So she didn't. She trusted him. That was her first mistake. They spent about 2 hours on the lake. It was cold but calm. They didn't catch anything, but it didn't matter. It was one of those rare, quiet sibling moments that actually felt good. They laughed, took stupid photos, told dumb stories. But as the sun started to dip, they realized it was time to head back. The temperature was dropping fast, and the light was fading. Drew packed up his stuff while Emily pulled the sled. They were about halfway across the lake when it happened. Another crack, much louder this time. Then a second. Then silence. Emily turned and saw Drew standing completely still. His eyes were wide, like he just heard something he couldn't explain. He whispered, "Don't move." Emily froze. There was a deep groan from beneath the ice, like something alive was waking up under them. Then, with this gut-wrenching snap, the ice gave way beneath Drew. She saw him vanish in an instant. 1 second he was standing. The next he was just gone. There was a splash, a scream, and then nothing but a gaping hole in the lake. She dropped the sled and ran, against everything in her brain screaming "don't move," and skidded to the edge of the hole. Drew, can you hear me? No answer. The water was black, the kind of cold that steals your breath the second it touches skin. She saw something, movement, and then Drew's arm shot up, grasping at the ice. But he couldn't pull himself up. She dropped to her stomach, reaching for him, screaming, "Give me your hand." But the ice around her cracked again. She could feel it flexing beneath her chest. One wrong move and she'd go under too. Drew was going into shock. Fast. His lips were already turning blue, his eyes unfocused. She said it was the first time in her life she truly understood what it meant to fight for someone. Not just yell for help. Not just panic. Fight. She dug the heels of her boots into the ice, laid flat and reached out again. Their fingers brushed, then missed. Again. Finally, she lunged just a little and caught his wrist. The ice groaned, started to spiderweb, but she held on. She said she could feel his skin go stiff. He wasn't even kicking anymore. He was giving up. "Drew, stay with me," she screamed, tears freezing to her face. "You can't die here. Please don't die." She doesn't know how she did it. She doesn't remember the exact moment. But somehow, using her legs, her arms, sheer panic, she dragged him onto the ice. Then she blacked out. When she came to, they were lying on the sled. She had passed out right after pulling him out, but somehow her body had enough instinct left to grab the sled and crawl back toward the cabin. She doesn't remember doing it. The next memory is waking up inside the cabin with the fire roaring. Her dad was wrapping her in blankets. Drew was coughing up water in the corner, wrapped in 4 layers of towels. His lips were split. His face was pale blue. They both had hypothermia, but they survived. Barely. The paramedics said if either of them had been in that water 30 seconds longer, they would have slipped under for good. But here's the part that haunts Emily the most. A week after they got home, their dad went back to the cabin to pick up some of the gear they'd left behind. When he walked out onto the frozen lake, he saw something that made him stop in his tracks. Another hole. Not the one Drew fell through. A different one, about 50 feet away. There were no footprints leading to it. Just a hole, perfectly circular, like something had come up from underneath. He never told Emily until years later. Didn't want to scare her, but she never forgot how it felt that day. That first crack, the sound under the ice. She told me sometimes, in dreams, she still hears it. That creaking sound, that black water pulling at her. And when winter comes, she avoids frozen lakes like her life depends on it. Because once, it really did. Some people brush off near-death experiences like they were just lucky. They walk away, try not to think about it, and move on. But for people like Travis, it's not that simple. I met Travis during a road trip through Nebraska. I was filming an abandoned places video for a side project, and I stopped by this broken-down town called Claymore. Total population? Maybe 100, and that's being generous. No gas station, no grocery store, just old barns, a single bar, and silence. Travis was sitting outside that bar, chain-smoking and staring off into the fields. He looked worn. Not just tired, but frayed somehow. Like whatever held him together had been stretched too thin for too long. We got to talking, and eventually I asked him, "You ever seen anything strange out here?" He paused, looked at me for a long time, then said, "You ever heard voices in a grain silo?" I thought he was messing with me, but then he told me his story, and I swear to you, his hand started shaking just from saying it out loud. It happened in the late 90s. He was 19, working for his uncle's farm in central Nebraska. His family didn't have much, life was hard, simple, repetitive. Wake up, tend to the livestock, fix what's broken, collapse in bed. But he liked the quiet, said it helped him think. One summer, his uncle had him helping with silo maintenance, the big steel towers where grain is stored before it's processed. These things are massive. If you've never seen one up close, Imagine standing next to a 70-foot tall tomb made of metal. They're also incredibly dangerous. The biggest risk is what's called a grain entrapment. Basically, if you step wrong on loose grain, you can sink in fast. It's like quicksand, but with wheat or corn. And once you're chest deep, the weight alone is enough to crush your lungs. People die that way all the time. Horribly. That summer was scorching. Everything was dry, brittle, and filled with static. They were unloading the north silo, and it had jammed again. Travis was told to go in and knock loose the clog. He didn't want to. He had a weird feeling about it all day. Not fear, exactly, just that off sensation, like when you're being watched. But his uncle didn't take excuses. So Travis strapped on a harness, clipped into the safety line, and climbed in. The air was thick, hot and dry, with the kind of smell that burns your nostrils, old grain, rust, and dust. It was quiet, too quiet. He walked across the crusted surface toward the jam, using a steel rod to poke at it. After a few minutes of jabbing, something shifted under his feet, and the crust gave way. Just like that, he went under fast, up to his chest in seconds. The grain pulled at him like it was alive. He reached for the safety line, but it snapped. Years later, he'd learn it had been frayed for months. He was alone, trapped. And then, the part he could never explain, came the voices. Faint at first, so soft he thought they were in his head. Then clearer. Whispers. He's here. We have him. Don't move. Don't breathe. He screamed for help. Kicked. Thrashed. Bad move. He sank deeper. The grain was over his chest now, pushing against his ribs like a slow-moving vice. He said he felt something cold beneath the surface, something that wasn't grain. Fingers, reaching up from below, not pulling, holding. He told me, it felt like someone didn't want me to get out, like they needed me down there. That's when he saw the shadows. Along the curved wall of the silo, far above, he saw what looked like hands. Black silhouettes moving along the metal, slow and jittery, like broken puppets. And the whispers kept going. Almost hours. Let him go. No. Then silence. Utter, pure silence. He said that was the worst part. Like the silo itself stopped breathing. He was about to pass out. Lungs burning, tears streaming down his face, when something shifted beneath him. A sudden jolt. Then from above, a voice. Not a whisper this time. A real voice. His cousin Jacob had just come back from lunch and heard Travis's screams. He called for help, tied off a rope, and dropped in as far as he could. Travis doesn't remember much after that. Just that Jacob kept yelling, "Don't go under! Don't let it take you!" while yanking the rope like his life depended on it. When they pulled Travis out, he was barely conscious. Grain in his mouth, in his ears, packed into every fold of his clothes. His eyes were red from the pressure. His legs wouldn't stop shaking. But he was alive. They found deep scratches on the inside of the silo wall later. Not from tools. Not from animals. From fingernails. Travis swears he didn't do it. And Jacob? He said when he pulled Travis free, he saw something disappear beneath the surface. Something pale and thin and not right. Travis quit the farm that same week. Moved into town. Got a job driving trucks. Refused to ever go near another silo. But sometimes, when he parks at night on empty highways, he hears whispers in the fields. Faint. We almost had you. Some homes are just wrong. It's not the architecture, not the layout, not even the history necessarily. Sometimes, it's a feeling. One that settles into your bones and makes your skin crawl like it knows something you don't. And for Olivia, that feeling nearly killed her. She was 29 when it happened, fresh off a painful divorce and trying to start over. She needed a reset, not just emotionally, but financially. So when she found a listing for a small farmhouse just outside Asheville, North Carolina, going for dirt cheap, she jumped at it. It was quiet, surrounded by woods and overgrown fields. No neighbors for almost a mile. The house itself looked tired but livable. 2 stories, creaky floors, paint peeling, but solid underneath. Felt like a place that had stories, and Olivia liked that. She didn't know those stories had teeth. The first night was calm. She unpacked, poured herself a glass of wine, sat on the back porch, and listened to the crickets. It was peaceful, but that feeling started the next morning. She woke up with a nosebleed, bad enough to stain her pillow. She'd never had one in her life. Her ears were ringing too, like she'd been near an explosion. She brushed it off. Stress, dry air, new place. But then things got stranger. She'd walk into rooms and smell smoke, faint like a match had just been blown out. Sometimes she'd hear footsteps upstairs, slow and deliberate. But every time she checked, the rooms were empty. Then there was the door, a basement door tucked away behind the pantry. It was bolted shut when she moved in. Not locked, bolted. Two massive steel bars across it, almost like someone had tried to seal whatever was down there inside. She didn't touch it, not at first. But over the next week, things escalated. Every night at exactly 3:17 a.m., she'd wake up, not because of a sound, just wake. Instantly, eyes wide open, heart racing, drenched in sweat. Sometimes she'd swear someone was standing in the hallway outside her bedroom, not moving, just watching. She'd fling the door open and find nothing, but the floor would be cold, too cold. Then the dream started, always the same. She's in the basement, only now the door is wide open, and something is waiting at the bottom of the stairs. Not a person, not an animal, just a shape. Long limbs, no eyes, skin like wet paper. It doesn't speak, doesn't move, but it wants her. Every time she'd wake up gasping, and every time she swore she heard something moving beneath the floorboards. Eventually, Olivia had enough. She called the realtor, demanded to know if anything had happened there. Death, fire, anything. The woman on the other end got quiet, then said, "That house was built on top of something, a foundation that predated the original farmhouse. We don't know who built it. Records don't go back that far. But," pause, "every time we sell it, the buyer lasts less than 3 months. You're the fourth in 6 years." That night, Olivia made a decision. She was going to open the basement. She wanted to see it, face whatever was down there. So she grabbed a crowbar, took a deep breath, and pried the bolts off the door. The air hit her like a slap. Rotting earth, wet metal, decay. She clicked on her flashlight and stepped down. The basement was dirt, no concrete, just packed soil, dark and damp. There were no signs of storage, no tools, no furniture, just something in the far corner. A depression in the ground, like something had been digging. She walked toward it, heart pounding when the light flickered, and went out. Pitch black. She heard movement, fast, all around her. Then whispering, a chorus of voices, male, female, child, all murmuring at once, saying things she couldn't understand. Then one voice rose above the rest, clear, closer than it should have been. "You weren't supposed to open the door." She screamed, turned, ran. As she sprinted up the stairs, something grabbed her ankle. She felt it, cold fingers, slick like they were coated in oil. She kicked, hard, and broke free, slamming the basement door shut behind her. This time, she nailed it shut. She left that night, slept in her car, engine running, windows up. The next morning, she called the county and demanded they send someone to check the house. An officer went out, walked the place, and reported nothing unusual. But when she asked if he opened the basement, he hesitated. "There was no basement," he said. "No door, no pantry, nothing." She drove back. He was right. The pantry was gone. The wall was solid, seamless. No door, no bolts, no scratches. It was like it had never existed. But Olivia remembered every second. She moved across the country 2 weeks later, started over again, refused to talk about it until I met her years later at a horror convention. She wasn't trying to sell a book or scare people. She just wanted someone to believe her. "I know what I saw," she said, "and I know what I let out." To this day, she wakes up at 3:17 a.m. every night. Drop of blood call to action, strong and suspenseful drop of blood. If you made it this far, you're one of us now. These stories aren't just scary, they're true. told by real people who brushed against the unexplainable and somehow made it out alive. But what if the next story is yours? Have you ever experienced something you can't explain? Something that still makes your heart race when the lights go out? Candle, drop your true horror story in the comments. You might hear it in the next episode. And if you want more real terror like this, stories that make you double-check your locks and leave the lights on, like, subscribe and hit the bell, because we're just getting started, and some stories, they don't end when the video does.